is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have quite a bit to discuss with you today. We have some models that we're going to go ahead and talk about, because based on what I've been seeing, there is a possibility that Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving weekend, we could be seeing a pretty significant snowstorm for a lot of people. The models are a bit inconsistent with it, but I still want to go ahead and talk about it for you guys, so that way we know what's going on. We can kind of see the general gist and see what the early indications are going for with this. And then as we get later into the video, we're going to be talking more about what we're going to see in early December, and then from so on and so forth. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right now. So starting off, we're going to go ahead and first take a look at some model runs right here. I do want to go ahead and just kind of jump right into it. And we're going to go ahead and go to precip type for the GFS. I know the GFS isn't particularly the best model. I know I've laughed and roasted it quite a bit. However, I do want to go ahead and show you this just for the sake of argument, and because this goes the furthest out. So I am going to be showing this predominantly in this section. However, I am going to be using other models to kind of compare and contrast and all of that stuff, as well as using previous GFS runs to show you kind of the inconsistent nature that I've been noticing with some of these runs as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the GFS. Here's what we got for you right here. This is currently November 19th going into the 20th. You do have that mountain snow, pretty typical. Low pressure system starts to develop. Then as we get to Thanksgiving break for a lot of college students, especially, and for people that do take Thanksgiving break off, in general, you do have this situation where you have snow starting to kind of pop up right here. We have a few Alberta clippers that we're watching for parts of Montana and parts of the Dakotas as well. And then as we get to Thanksgiving Day and towards that time frame, you do see a low pressure system, according to the GFS, start to build up a little bit. Right here, you do start to see a little bit of snow starting to kind of develop in parts of the Great Plains and in the Eastern Mountains, as well in Colorado, and then things start to ramp up by around Black Friday, according to this GFS run, in Missouri and Illinois, where you could see some potentially pretty heavy snowfall. 36 dBz is pretty heavy with this. Please do keep in mind that this is, by this point, 9+ days out, so this is a very highly variable. I'm just mainly looking at this to kind of see the synoptic setup, and kind of for the sake of argument as well, and especially to look at that thickness line of 5,400, because your ideal snowfall needs to happen. I wouldn't say needs to happen, but your ideal snowfall would have to be below 5,400 meters at 500 millibars. That's about 18,000 feet up. And if you get anything above that, you're more likely to see rain. Anything below that, you're more likely to see snow. That's just the general thickness that COD and degreed Mets like myself use to kind of showcase where that thickness is. So that's what you have right here. You have some cold air moving through, as well as the snowstorm moves through Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, into parts of the Appalachian regions of West Virginia and Maryland. And then moving into the northeastern U.S., Pennsylvania, New Jersey, that rain snow line gets pretty proficient right here, especially around Philly, Trenton, New York City, and even Boston will get some snowfall as well. It's going to be very borderline according to this run. And then on the 30th, you have another snowstorm. You have another Colorado low start to develop according to the GFS. By the time we do see this, though this is 10+ days out, I do want to preface that, but you do have potentially something happening in the Great Lakes region and in the upper Midwest in Minnesota, Iowa, and those regions, as well as more snowfall starts to run through, as well, particularly in Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, even the upper peninsula of Michigan after the fact, especially with that lake effect snow starting to kick in. But we'll have to see how that pans out, especially as we go into early December. So that's what we're looking at for our Thanksgiving surprise a little bit, potentially, if the GFS is to be believed. However, there are some problems with this run. I want to first take a quick gander at the 500 millibar heights with this. First of all, the 500 millibar heights aren't particularly the most, at least in terms of the jet angle and the wind speed, those aren't particularly the most favorable for this, in my opinion, mainly because you have zonal flow going with this, especially around Thanksgiving, and then going into Black Friday. You do see a shortwave trough start to develop over here, you're starting to notice this kind of dip in the wind speed. You're noticing this dip in terms of your heights right here. That's your shortwave that does develop, and that honestly could be a reason why we do see some snowfall, and we do see a snowstorm kind of ballooning through much of the East Coast and much of the Midwest as well. And then you see this trough starting to move through, and that actually would be favorable for a winter snowstorm, especially a Colorado low, a kind of a trough looking like this, a positively tilted slightly tilt to trough like this would be favorable in general for some snowfall, particularly in the Great Plains and in parts of the upper Midwest as well. So the GFS is modeling, at least in terms of the jet angle, is somewhat sound, but I am a little confused and I am a little bit skeptical to see if that holds or not. But the synoptics are definitely there for this kind of situation for sure. Another thing I do want to take a look at too is the temperatures as well, not just the 500 temperatures, the surface temps. And looking at these temps right now, taking a look at for Thanksgiving weekend, particularly Thanksgiving Day, you do see some cold air moving through parts of the United States right there. You do see that that rain snow line, that freezing line right there moving through, especially as you get to Thanksgiving Day. Temperatures, particularly in parts of the Midwest, according to this, would be in the 30s in the morning. They would get up to about, I'd say, 40-ish degrees by the time we get to the afternoon, where the high temperatures are forecast for a lot of these regions. And you do see more of this starting to pop up right here. But the one thing that is really I'm really not liking here is the temperatures. You're looking at 33 degrees, 35 degrees, and 33, 32. That temperature is not ideal for snowfall right here, at least in the Midwest. In parts of maybe the upper Midwest, in parts of the Northeast, yeah, it would be more favorable for that. But those temperatures would need to come down, and they do going into Friday night, as you see that temperature, especially in parts of Missouri, getting down to the 20s right here. And just to cross-check this with the precipitation type, by that point, the cold front has moved through, and this is 12Z on Friday as well. So by the time we do see that, you're looking at borderline freezing temperatures, like 33, 34 degrees. You won't see much accumulation unless the snowfall is very heavy in this part of the Midwest right here. But you will still want to pay attention to it because, things can change and all of that stuff. But by and large, this isn't the most favorable setup for a snowstorm development, at least in parts of the Midwest. In the upper Midwest, definitely more favorable. In the Northeast, definitely more favorable as well. You're going to want to pay attention to see how this pans out as well, especially as we go into Saturday and Sunday as well, when that other low pressure system starts to develop. Yeah, that's going to be a lot more favorable for a snowstorm, especially in parts of Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, where your temperatures are a lot lower. It's going to be a lot more favorable. And you have this Arctic air as well. And another thing we need to talk about too, this Arctic air moving through parts of the Great Plains and moving through much of the Midwest afterward. Keep in mind the temperatures are going to be, at least in this part, -7, -9. This is December 2nd. This is going to be a bit unrealistic and a bit higher and a bit more on the extreme side. This is the GFS after all. But by and large, you definitely are going to be seeing some Arctic air pushing into much of the Northwest. Not the Northwest, much of the continental United States as well. So that's something you're going to want to take into consideration as well. Now, now that we're done with that, I do want to go ahead and show you some the 0Z and from today and the 12Z from yesterday as well, just to kind of show you what that whole situation looks like, and to kind of show you the inconsistency with the models as well, because this is a situation I'm pretty skeptical about right here. So let's go ahead and go to Thanksgiving. Right here, you have the low pressure system moving through right there. You have like a few snowflakes as well, but Black Friday for the 0Z doesn't show much outside of Michigan, Wisconsin, and other parts of the Great Lakes. They're favoring more of a lake effect type of situation then. And then as time goes on, as you start seeing this low pressure system start to develop on the 30th, you do see some snowfall starting to emerge right there, but compared to the 12Z, it's hundreds of miles further to the south, and where that low pressure system develops is further to the south as well. So it's definitely one of those things that you're going to want to watch. There is some consistency with the Thanksgiving weekend snowstorm, but the question is, where's it going to go? How strong is it going to get? And what do the synoptics favor? We just have a general framework of what's going on. And yes, the troughs and the ridges do align with it perfectly, and you do have good temperatures for it, but that's all the synoptics that we know at this current point. And at this point, speculating on any type of snowfall would be pretty irresponsible, but it's just something I do want to emphasize as well. And then going to the 12Z from yesterday as well, more inconsistencies continue to align. You do see this low pressure system, which actually you do have some rainfall through much of the United States and much of the Midwest starting to move through with some snowfall in the Appalachian regions. Then on Thanksgiving, you have a bit of a snow squall moving through parts of the Midwest right here, and then going into Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi, which even on its own in late November is pretty unrealistic. I'm not even going to entertain this type of scenario right here. And that's just where I'm going to leave it at this current point. It does have that snowfall scenario possible for parts of the Midwest, particularly the Chicago area, going into Detroit and those areas as well, but you're going to want to pay attention to that, mainly because the inconsistent nature. It's not saying a snowstorm is not going to happen, which I do think is pretty interesting, but it is pretty inconsistent in terms of the track, in terms of the intensity, in terms of the amount of snowfall as well. So that's some things that we do need to consider right there. And also we need to take a look at other models as well, in particular with the total snow accumulation, as we're going to be using the European with this as well. So going with the European right here, we're going to go ahead and show you this. It doesn't really show that much snowfall, for example, compared to the GFS. Taking a look at the 12Z GFS right here. The 12Z GFS wants multiple inches of snowfall to happen in much of the Midwest right here, much of the southern Midwest right here. Those temperatures are not going to let that happen. I'm going to tell you that right now. It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. I do think snowfall is especially more likely in New England and in the northeastern United States, and with that snowstorm that develops on the 30th that impacts the upper Midwest. But snowfall for Black Friday across much of these regions, especially like St. Louis, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, temperatures are going to be too warm for that. Shortwave is definitely interesting, and we might want to see how that pans out. But unless those temperatures cool down another, I'd say 3 degrees or so, and it's still possible. It can happen. I don't really see a scenario like this happening at this current point, but we'll still keep an update on it, since this would impact a lot of people regardless. And then as you go towards the Thanksgiving weekend snowstorms, particularly the 30th of November and the 1st of December right here, the GFS wants a massive amount of snowfall to fall in parts of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. I'm just going to shoot this off and tell you this is unrealistic at this current point. We're not going to see 32 inches of snowfall in parts of Iowa and Minnesota in late November and early December, based on the synoptic pattern. It's a bit unrealistic. I think the GFS is overdoing the amount of snowfall with this. Even looking at the European right here, the European's averaging probably about 8 inches of snowfall or so for a lot of these regions on the higher end. Unless you're in the Great Lakes, where you're seeing potentially over a foot in areas like Buffalo and areas like Erie, Pennsylvania, and those continuous areas too. But by and large, we're not going to see a pretty historic snowstorm for a lot of areas. I think maybe a good 6-inch snowstorm is possible for right now, unless something unexpected happens. But ultimately, Europeans definitely looking at this and going, okay, yeah, we could definitely see some snowfall, but it's mainly going to be relegated to parts of the upper Midwest, maybe the Chicago area and into Michigan as well, and then for the Great Lakes region for the Thanksgiving weekend. That's what the European is thinking at this current point. Looking at the GM-GDPS does have that scenario kind of happening. You do start to see that scenario on parts of the model run right here starting to develop, particularly for the upper Midwest and particularly for the Great Plains right here, kind of having the low pressure system developing off of Colorado right here, moving into Kansas, producing a lot of snowfall for a lot of areas in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and those areas potentially could get dragged down to the Chicago area if this low pressure system continues to develop and pushes a little bit further to the south. But even still, you are looking at potentially 9+ inches for a lot of Montana and the Dakotas and going into Minnesota. Also, this run isn't even finished just yet, but we do have the basic framework and we do have the basic scenarios as to what this potential Thanksgiving weekend snowstorm could look like for a lot of people, in Minnesota, for a lot of people in the upper Midwest, in those areas too. So that's something we're going to want to pay attention to here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. So, and on top of that, you're looking at the cold that's going to be coming in behind this. Yeah, it's going to definitely bring in some cooler temperatures as well. And now that we are done with that, we can kind of go to the CFS and kind of show you what at least the pattern is going to look like with this situation, as well as what we may be seeing in early December. What you're seeing with this is on the 29th, you're definitely noticing some pretty cool temperatures, pretty cool upper air temperatures that could definitely favor some cold air damming. And honestly, if a scenario where we see snowfall happen in the parts of the Midwest that GFS is forecasting, this would be the reason why we would see that, because of cold air damming. So if those temperatures drop on the surface, you could definitely see a scenario where that happens, but at this current point, I'm not really ruling on it or betting on it at this current point. But I will say it is an intriguing way to look at it, and especially for parts of the East Coast as well. This is a more cooler, favorable environment that could favor more snowfall, especially when more of these troughs come in. And more of these Arctic waves come in. You start to see another one in early December on the 4th and the 5th move through much of the Midwest as well. That's likely going to be behind the snowstorm that's going to be moving through parts of Minnesota and parts of the upper Midwest and Great Lakes region. And then as we get to the second week of December, you get really cold temperatures in parts of the Upper Peninsula, parts of New England and New York as well. And then you start seeing more of a troughing pattern starting to really dig down into parts of the United States going into December 18th right here. And then as we get to the 20th, it definitely blocks in and brings in a lot more cold air for a lot of regions as well, in parts from pretty much Montana all the way to the East Coast. That is going to be very interesting to see, especially how that favors in terms of snowfall development, in terms of how our low pressure systems develop. That could be a more favorable environment for some pretty strong winter storms for the Midwest and potentially the East Coast as well. That's pretty strong and that's pretty favorable for that as well. And it looks like the pattern will hold for quite some time, maybe even dig down a little bit further to the south into areas like Kentucky and Tennessee as well, those cooler temperatures. So that's something that you're going to want to watch out for going into December. But winter looks like it's going to be starting off with a bit of a bang right here for some parts of the United States. And going into December, we could be seeing some pretty big snow events if all these models hold and we see the climatology act up. Also, you have to consider too, we are in a La Nina as well, and that favors a cooler and more snowfall of a favorable environment for parts of the Midwest and other parts of the United States. It doesn't favor as much in the east coast of the U.S. Because that rain-snow line is going to push up a bit further off the coast. Like, for example, if the rain-snow line on average is just south of Philly, this year it's going to be north of Philly. Same with New York City, same with Boston, same example right there. So definitely a favorable environment going into this winter. Right here that we're going to want to watch out for. And I think this will run for a very long winter regardless of how we see this early start go on. And especially as we go to late December, January, and February, we could still see more of those scenarios happening. And we'll continue to keep you updated on all of these events so far. And we'll keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you would like to help us out, hang out, or ask us some questions, as well as kind of be a part of our winter analysis team, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. We'd really appreciate it if you came on and kind of contributed and helped us out. quite a bit. It helps us improve the quality of these videos, and it helps us with the streams, especially since we're going to be starting that once the snow event starts to ramp up. So yeah, we're going to be doing some more fun activities behind the scenes, and I can't wait to get started with that. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful day. Stay safe.